Sarah, for the benefit of people who don't know the story behind the arrival of these bike sheds, what do you call them?
I call them bike hangars.
Bike hangars. What is the story behind them? How did they come to be here?
Okay, so they are for residents who want to do more cycling and who don't have space at home to keep a bike. We introduced about 4 last winter, and that was an experimental thing. And this year we've been fortunate to get additional funding from the West of England Combined Authority, and together with a small amount of our income from the Clean Air Zone, we are currently in the process of putting in 20 additional bike hangars. And there may be further opportunities actually later in the year. So if there are communities who feel they've missed out on this round, there'll be further opportunities to apply for new locations later in the year, we hope, with additional West of England Combined Authority money.
Now, you're not the only local authority that's brought in these particular bike racks. What are you calling them?
Hangars.
Hangars, bike hangars. Keep thinking aircraft and I'll think hangars. You're not the only local authority that is bringing in bike hangars, but is it one particular company that's approaching local authorities around the country saying, we can give you a good deal?
Well, as I mentioned, we're working closely with the West of England Combined Authority, and in this instance, the procurement has been led by the West of England Combined Authority. So on this occasion, we've not been given a choice about the model of hangar. But obviously, this is a 2-year trial. So we want to try them out. We want to see how people feel about them once they're settled in. We want to find out whether they're well used, because of course, the 4 that we put in earlier in the year were oversubscribed within days of their being installed. So they're obviously popular. And if we can prove that they are popular, then we'll have more opportunity, perhaps in future, to choose a design that we feel might be more in keeping with the city, if that's where we get to.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm a cyclist like you, and I welcome any means of providing secure parking for bikes, and bikes are not cheap these days. And if you have an electric bike, you know, that's a big outlay, and you don't want your bike stolen. But I have to say, they're not the most attractive thing I've ever seen.
No, although arguably, you know, to what extent do they look better or worse than a large car parked in the same spot? You could debate that one. What I can tell you is that they're quite a practical model. So I've seen other models around that have more mesh on them. So they're a bit more see-through. They're perhaps a little bit less intrusive on the eye. But the disadvantage to that is that it doesn't keep the weather out so well for the bikes, and also that the thieves can see what they're trying to get into potentially. Yeah, so that the model that we've got is very practical. It's also quite spacious. So as I understand it, there are bikes with child seats, with baskets on, that I understand many of those can be fitted into this model. I am aware that there are even larger bikes out there that won't be accommodated, and that's something we'll have to look at in future. But for now, these are really quite a practical model for us to experiment with.
Now, cyclists might well welcome them, and I'm sure they are, but of course there are other people living on these streets who don't have bikes, but do have cars, who aren't very pleased about seeing these parked on the curbside, and I've been told in some cases actually on the curb, that they're too big and part of them is on the pavement. What say have residents had in whether they have one of these bike hangars and where it goes?
So just to pick up on the pavement issue, I understand that they have to be positioned just slightly up on the pavement in order to be able to access them for the bikes. So that's to deal with that issue. I mean, in terms of say, there was a consultation through March in which residents could put forward proposed locations, and all of these locations have come forward through that route. So there are residents obviously who have requested them in each of these places, and now it's a trial, and we'll be assessing what kind of feedback we get, you know, and we'll look at the outcome of that.
So you're saying at some point in the future, if enough people complain, about where a particular bike hanger has been positioned, it might be moved.
I'm saying it's a trial. So if we find a particular location causes a particular problem of some sort, then we can certainly look at that. And the other thing to say is I think that a safety issue has been raised, a question around, will they be visible? And one thing we're looking at is whether we might put fluorescent tape on them.
So they show up at night.
Yeah, but in terms of the visibility, I think it's a completely open point, to discuss about, do they look better or worse than the cars that were previously parked there?
You're not allowed to paint them, I suppose. You couldn't just paint them a nicer colour.
What, the council? Or I don't know. I mean, there are, so some places have hangers with a sort of bespoke wrap. So that is something that a council could look into doing. Of course, there's a cost attached to that.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult time for funding. But again, if they become permanent, that might be the sort of thing we look at doing.
Of course, the other scourge of any urban area are those who like leaving their mark, shall we say, on things. Graffiti could be an issue here. How would you deal with that?
I understand that it's just will be a question of flagging it up in the usual way. So whether that's, contact the council and the graffiti team will come out and sort it out. So whether that's by phoning up or by using Fix My Street.
The complaints we're getting in Bath are mirrored elsewhere. Somebody pointed out a scheme in Oxford where people are getting very hot under the collar about where these bike hangers have been positioned. Some could turn around and say it's NIMBYism. We don't want it in our backyard. You can have it somewhere down the way. Are we saying to people that, it is a trial scheme, so give it a chance, but in a way, this is the future, that you've got to make room amongst all your parked cars for another form of transport which isn't quite as damaging to the environment?
I think you put it well, Richard. I mean, I think we need to, we're interested in giving people real choice and options that aren't cars. And we know that in Bath, there are plenty of households that don't have space to store a bike. And this is about giving those households a real option. Give them a chance. Let's just see how they work out. If we find locations where they're simply not popular, or in terms of take up, or there are other practical problems, then there's potential to rethink. It's a trial.
But there is every possibility that we could be seeing more bike hangers around the city rather than less.
Well, as I say, as an administration, we've said we're very keen to give people additional options for getting around. And I believe there's the possibility of future West of England Combined Authority money for a further rollout. So if there may be neighbourhoods who feel they missed the boat and missed the original consultation, and they can get in touch with new locations.
I think we're pretty near a point where we're going to have a changeover in e-scooters.
Oh yes, that's right.
The contract for e-scooters
right.
In the city with, I think, a company that's also going to be hiring out electric bikes.
Yes, that's right.
Are you happy with the e-scooter thing in Bath? I mean, once again, there are those who say damn things, they shouldn't be on the road or on the pavement, but the take-up seems to be pretty good.
I think, it's just a really positive development, isn't it? It's just, as we're talking about extending choice, it's another option for people. And I know that people have used e-scooters for all kinds of purposes. Some of them are using them for routes that they would previously have walked, some for driving. But I think in the round, I've seen data that suggests that overall carbon emissions have been reduced. And I think it's just another option that's out there.
Are you excited for the future of cycling in Bath? I know we're talking about B&NES, but I'm basically interested in the city because that's where I'm based.
Yeah, I think I am really excited actually, because technological developments like e-bikes, which are only just sort of coming into, some people's consciousness. People are only just becoming aware of the potential for them. And by the way, if you haven't been on an e-bike, go and take one for a trial ride, because they really do flatten hills. And where Bath previously, might have felt out of many people's league in terms of cycling, I think e-bikes can transform that, and that is the huge potential.
As I say to people, you still have to pedal.
You do.
It might not be quite as difficult, but you've still got to do it.
You do.
Thank you.